Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're starting an emotional new what-if story. What if Hinata became the light in Sasuke's darkest days? Their unexpected bond changed everything. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss future episodes. If you're excited for this story, comment below. Hinata can change Sasuke's destiny. Now sit back, relax, and discover how an unexpected bond begins to change Sasuke's life. Let's begin. Part 1. Would things be different if Itachi had not succumbed to illness? Would the warm rays of the sun feel so cold? Would everything he ate be so tasteless? Would the days blur into one another, impossible to distinguish one from the next? Would he struggle to find a reason to rise from bed in the morning? Sasuke asked himself those questions as he absent-mindedly peered into his bowl of rice. He had been sitting at his two-person dinner table for some time but had barely touched his rice. The rice tasted too much like nothing for him to enjoy it. Maybe he needed to consult Sakura about his taste buds. Then again, that was probably not a great idea. He was not on good terms with Sakura. He forced down one last mouthful of rice and deposited the remaining rice back into the pot. His dull kitchen was as bare as bones with nothing but a two-man dinner table and the most basic kitchen necessities. It was just as bare as the rest of his three-room cottage. That bare, unremarkable cottage in the forest housed the last Uchiha, the last remnant of a cursed clan. If only the walls could talk. He entered his ensuite bathroom, bent down to the height of the bathroom sink and turned the faucet. Blood gushed out of the tap. His heartbeat escalated. He clenched his eyes shut. Crystal clear water was flowing from the tap when he opened his eyes. He was imagining things again. He washed his face and brushed his teeth. He was heading out. He preferred the seclusion of his cottage but sometimes felt as though spending one more minute in his lonely tomb would drive him insane. Home, was that what he called it now? He straightened and looked into the mirror. A pale face looked back at him. It told a tale of wasting away. Long unkempt hair framed his face. His cheeks were becoming more sunken by the day. His chronic lack of appetite and sleeping problems were to thank for his haggard appearance. He wore his cloak and strapped on his sandals. He saw no need to take a bath even though he had not had one in 3 days. Why bother? It would only add to the bountiful futility in his life. He grabbed the book next to his futon, slipped it into the inner pocket of his cloak and left the dead cottage. He left the place unlocked. Who would have the courage to break into his home? His katana remained untouched in his bedroom, collecting dust like it had been doing for months. The yellow-orange star that hung in the sky burned brightly. It was the start of summer. He knew that the sun was supposed to be scorching today but he felt nothing. Lately, everything just felt so cold, so dead. He took to the trees and was a blur as he sped from branch to branch. He was heading for the village, to one of the few places he retreated to when the cottage became unbearable. It was a quiet place with good shade. Naruto never bothered him when he went there. It was as though the idiot understood that he only went there when he was in no mood to be bothered. He circled the outskirts of Konoha. He took the longer route because he was not interested in directly passing through the village. By using this route, the chances of bumping into people were much slimmer. It was mostly him and the trees. He enjoyed being alone. He did not need anyone in his life. That was what he would keep telling himself until he believed it. He would not dwell on how he sometimes couldn't breathe because of the silence surrounding him. 8 months had passed since the end of the Fourth Shinobi World War. A war that had been the conclusion to a conflict that had started thousands of years ago. Many shinobi had perished in the war but as always, life had moved on. He reached his destination, the Eastern Training Grounds. He had only seen 5 people along the way. All of them had been civilians he did not know. He proceeded to Training Ground 3. It was the training ground they had been allocated as a genin team in a time that felt so long ago. Too long ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed. In a sense, it had with all that had happened. The training ground always took him back to the old days. The days he had spent with Kakashi, Naruto and Sakura as a genin team. His teammates were moving on with their lives while his feet remained rooted in place. Those who break the rules are scum but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. He remembered the day Kakashi had said those words to them. He had been drowning in hatred but the sun had been so warm back then. Naruto had been so optimistic. Sakura had been nothing but a thorn in his side. He had been so full of hate, so determined, so purposeful, so alive. He felt a blunt pain in his heart. The familiar clearing came into view. His reminiscing skidded to a halt when he noticed something foreign. It sat by the Yoshino tree on his left, on the grass beneath the shade. Anger erupted within him, tension hardened his neck and shoulders. This was sacred ground. The foreign element needed to be removed. Its presence threatened one of the few things he had not irreparably ruined. He approached the cancer that needed to be eradicated. It looked up at him with large, round lavender eyes. A moment passed, and then another, and another. The Hyuga stared at him, speechlessly. The girl was cross-legged on the grass with her back against the tree. She was dressed in navy pants and a light lavender jacket. Her skin was pale, too pale. Her indigo-colored hair was a stark contrast to her skin. Her book had fallen from her grasp and was lying on the ground. The two of them remained like that for a while, neither of them looking away. The pangs of anger never left him. This girl thought she could just invade his sanctuary. Was he not even allowed to preserve this one thing, the only unsullied piece of his past? Was that too much to ask? He envisioned the girl's porcelain flesh burning like plastic under the eternal flames of Amaterasu. His morbid imaginings stopped when he suddenly thought of Naruto. Guilt overtook him and his anger melted like a block of ice on a hot stove plate. What was he thinking? They were not genin anymore. This training ground no longer belonged to Team 7. There was no Team 7. What was the point of removing cancer from something already dead? He was chasing the wind. Sasuke-san, the girl spoke in a mellow voice. It sounded like cotton and the soothing drizzle of rain. Tension bled out of his body. He exhaled wearily and planted himself on the opposite end of the tree. He did not acknowledge her. A childish part of him wanted to show her that this was his territory. He would sit next to her to demonstrate that he did as he pleased in this place. She could leave if it bothered her. He retrieved his book from his cloak. He had developed a hobby of reading. Reality was rarely palatable. He had found an escape in fiction. The escape was temporary, but it was better than no escape at all. On some days, when the dark thoughts were too great to bear, even reading failed to provide an escape. Sasuke-san, you look. The contemptuous look he gave the girl silenced her. She swallowed nervously. He searched her features. She spoke to him as though she knew him. He studied her lavender eyes and long indigo hair. A prickling urge told him that he knew the girl from somewhere. Perhaps he did not know her. Maybe she reminded him of someone he knew. It's been a long time, Sasuke-san. You would almost think we don't live in the same village, the girl continued. He looked away from her and focused on the book in his hand. Maybe he did know her after all. It's been 6 months to be exact. He did not respond. He lost himself in the book he was reading. The girl was a living ball of discomfort. He could almost taste her discomfort. She kept stealing glances at him and fidgeting now and then. He came close to rolling his eyes. She could just leave if she felt so uncomfortable. He grew weary of her actions and decided to do both of them a favor by telling her off. A few sharp words would make her storm off in anger or maybe in tears, judging from how soft she seemed. He glared at her after preparing piercing words in his mind. The girl looked up from the book in her petite hands and flinched. She looked back down, trying to avoid his eyes. He lost interest in telling her off. What was he doing? What was the point anyway? He often asked himself that question. What was the point of waking up? What was the point of leaving his cottage? What was the point in training? What was the point of being in Konoha? Once upon a time, he had believed that avenging his clan and producing heirs was the purpose of his life. Now, the thought of having children scared him. He wiped the glare off his face, cracked his neck and refocused on his book. Time marched forward. They continued in the same manner, the girl fidgeting and him ignoring her. The girl finally stood up. He did not know how much time had passed. He had not been keeping track. She dusted off her clothing, held her book close to her chest and hovered over him. He ignored her until he finally caved in and spared her a crumb of his attention. Their eyes connected before she looked away while blushing. I'm sorry for intruding into your space. I just wanted a quiet place where I could clear my mind and get a change of scenery. She lingered on. Naruto worries about you. He figured she knew Naruto on a personal level. She knew Naruto well enough to know that Naruto was concerned about him. Naruto should worry about himself, he spat. He half expected the girl to break down in tears because of the venom in his voice. She seemed like such a fragile little girl, smiled instead. 2 birds were singing from the branches of the Yoshino tree. Birds like that had resided in their yard in the Uchiha district. A fresh wave of melancholy washed over him. A breeze blew the girl's hair. Sweet-smelling strands of indigo danced in the air. It's not easy to let go of the people we care about, Sasuke-san, the girl whispered. Her eyes discomforted him. He felt as though they could see everything that he was, as though they saw past flesh and bone and peered right into the most hidden corners of his being. Sasuke-san should eat more. The girl turned to leave but then paused and turned back to him. She looked conflicted. Her cheeks turned crimson, determination crystallized in her strange eyes. Sasuke-san also needs a bath. He felt his mouth parting on its own. The girl spun around and disappeared into the sun. He knew he did not smell like a field of flowers. He had not bathed in 3 days after all. Still, he was surprised that a seemingly spineless girl had pointed it out to him. Him, of all people. Many things had been said to him since he had returned to Konoha, but this. His lips curved into a minuscule smile. He looked back at his book and shook his head. A shy little Hyuga had told him that he reeked. Gong, 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 gong. The loud pounding continued steadily. All was pitch black. He could not see beyond his outstretched arm, the same arm he had lost during his fight with Naruto. Nothing made sense to him. Where was he? How had his arm miraculously regrown? And why was it so dark? Only his training and experience restrained him from outright panic. Gong, gong, gong. He wandered, groping in the dark like a sightless man. The gong ceased abruptly and the darkness slowly faded. 2 boys appeared in the mysterious realm. The boys were holding hands. The elder boy seemed to be around 9 years old. The younger boy was about half that age. The sight of their joined hands pained him. He knew those boys better than anyone. They were him and Itachi before life had rotted into such a heartbreaking elegy. The boys aged rapidly and half a decade passed in the blink of an eye. A familiar gang of devils emerged from nowhere. He felt a burning in his and trembled at the sight of the newcomers. He was not trembling from fear. His younger self withdrew from Itachi as the devils surrounded Itachi like starved predators going in for a kill. He reached for his katana as the devils, the third Hokage and his advisors, neared his brother. He would cut them down where they stood. He uttered profanities. His katana was not in his possession. The Hokage and his band of bastards suddenly had swords in their hands. His racing heart quickened even further. He would kill them with his bare hands if they touched Itachi. He purposed his body to run to the unholy congregation, but his legs refused to cooperate. Rusted shackles shot out of the pitch-black ground and chained Itachi's hands and feet. He fought the unseen force restraining him, moving to no avail. Move, damn it! He struggled fruitlessly. The devils raised their blades at Itachi. Danzo was laughing. Blood was rushing in his ears. Don't you dare! I'll kill you! The Hokage served the first blow, burying his blade into Itachi's side. He gathered every particle of strength within himself in a futile attempt to move his feet. Itachi groaned but held back a scream. He screamed, his voice raw, and wished 1,000 torments upon Itachi's assailants. The Hokage ripped his blade from Itachi's midsection. Blood gushed from Itachi's wound. Danzo and the others joined in. They pierced Itachi, again and again and again. Itachi was no longer holding back screams. The younger Sasuke laughed through it all. A sob broke free from his throat. He was powerless against Itachi's plight. Why was he being forced to helplessly witness this horror? He wept as Itachi screamed until his voice grew hoarse. Until his vocal cords were producing nothing but a wheeze. Itachi miraculously held on to life while kneeling in a pool of blood. Itachi's blood had soaked the devils up to their elbows. The younger Sasuke approached the group, katana in hand. His parents joined them in the mysterious realm. Their throats were cut open and ropes of wet velvet were guzzling down their throats, but they were alive. His mother wept when she saw Itachi. His grim-faced father bitterly curled his lip, closed his eyes and shook his head. Itachi raised his limp head to see the young Sasuke. Itachi was a revolting artwork of blood and gore. Brother, Itachi groaned before coughing blood. The young Sasuke drove his katana into Itachi's heart. He woke up screaming when the dream finally shattered. He took a moment to steady his breathing. The cold in his limbs was not due to the weather. The clock told him it was just after 2 a.m. He rose and went to the bathroom to drink water, but not before turning on the light to chase the menacing shadows away. There was little hope for sleep. Sleep often eluded him after such nightmares. He went to the living room. In the living room stood a sofa, a bookshelf and a wooden table that was smothered in dust. There was a fireplace next to the bookshelf. He picked a novel from the dusty bookshelf and reclined on the sofa. The novel was about a lonely shinobi on a quest to find that one thing that would give his life meaning. The lonely shinobi did not know what he was searching for. He had merely been told by an old fortune teller to head west and that he would find it along the way. He wanted to know what would give meaning to the lonely shinobi's life. Perhaps this author knew a remedy for the emptiness inside him. In the end, he only managed to read 3 or 4 pages before giving up on reading. He was struggling to concentrate. He could not concentrate when his mind was still trapped in the nightmare. Hey, open up. Open the damn door or else I'll break it down. You know I'll do it. Tem. The shouts were followed by banging on the door. Tem, I know you're in there. Sasuke opened his eyes. Sleep had claimed him just before the break of dawn. It was too early for the commotion. What did the Dobi want from him? He unlocked the door and slightly opened it so he could peek at Naruto on the other side. Naruto was dressed in dark shinobi pants, a white t-shirt with an orange spiral on the torso and an orange thigh-length jacket that was a few shades paler than his old jumpsuit. Naruto's style was more respectable nowadays. What the hell do you want? Naruto seized the door handle and swung the door wide open. You cut your hair, Dobi. Naruto frowned and touched his head. It's been 2 months since I started keeping it this short, Naruto said softly. You haven't noticed this whole time. He glowered at Naruto. He loathed that look of concern, that look of pity, Naruto was giving him. He was not some sick, dying dog in need of sympathy. What do you want? Come on, Sasuke, is that how you greet your best friend? Who said we're friends? Naruto grinned. He so wished to slap that smug grin off Naruto's face. I want to spar. I've been itching to give you a good old beating. Plus, I need to blow off some steam. Naruto was already stretching his arms in anticipation. Find somebody else. Naruto's grin faltered. Come on Tem, why do you always say that? Keep this up and you'll become as weak as Kiba. He snorted. I could have both my arms and legs amputated and I'd still be more capable than Dog Boy. Come on, Sasuke, it'll just be like the old days. I know Kakashi can't be there because he's Hokage and all, but maybe we can get Sakura to watch if she's not busy. It'll just be like old times. Naruto bolstered his persuasions with a sunny grin. I have better things to do. He had lost the will to fight. That inferno that had pushed him to hone his skills and reach new heights was gone. Fighting just seemed so futile lately. So void of meaning and purpose. You have better things to do. You mean isolating yourself, reading those books of yours and beating yourself up over things you cannot change? Questioned Naruto, his smile gone. When was the last time you talked to people? Had fun? When was the last time you looked forward to something? You're miserable, Sasuke. A tightness strained his chest. He flexed his jaw and breathed in deeply. He no longer wanted Naruto near him. He took another deep breath, but the pressure in his chest only strengthened. Leave. Now. No, rebelled Naruto. I'm not leaving. I want you to start living again. I want the old Sasuke back. Not this pathetic corpse standing before me. He tried to shut the door in Naruto's face. Naruto slammed his arm against the door to keep it open. He released the door handle and shoved Naruto. The blonde stumbled backwards. Piss off. His chest rose and fell in a furious rhythm. Naruto's sky-blue eyes went moist before he averted them. A twinge of guilt pierced his insides. He too could no longer meet the gaze of the one opposite him. That Sasuke is Dia. Naruto silenced him with a raised hand. You're wrong. He's not dead. Naruto's voice cracked towards the end. I know he's not. They stood silent, neither of them relenting. Naruto eventually sighed, hid his hands in his pockets and turned around. He's still in there, somewhere. Naruto left with the gait of a defeated man. His old teammate had never looked so beaten before. Perhaps Naruto would finally let him be. He was not a little lamb that needed saving. The wind blasted his hair as he sped through the trees. He was on his way to Training Ground 3. He needed to escape his cottage again. He felt as if the walls were whispering about him again. He had nowhere else to go. No real place to be. No one to see. He had no responsibilities and no duties to fulfill. To most, he probably seemed like a wandering cloud, floating and unreachable. Naruto had encouraged him to re-enlist in the ranks, but he had no use for running around accomplishing missions. Nowadays, the missions were even less interesting since they were living in times of unprecedented peace between the 5 great shinobi villages. Besides, him being an active shinobi was merely futility's echo. He found the indigo-haired girl by the old Yoshino tree. How long had it been since she had told him to bath? 3 days. A week. It mattered not. Nothing mattered. The girl tensed when she sensed him. He walked over to her like he owned the very ground she was sitting on and sat beside her. Sasuke-san, the girl greeted. He made a sound in his throat in response. The trees and plants around them were ever so green. Birds were chirping melodies. He would have thought the atmosphere to be beautiful a few years ago. Now, it was difficult to be moved by beauty when the wretchedness of life consumed his attention so selfishly. He allowed his mind to don wings and fly away into the sweeter realm of fiction. The girl whispered to him. He glared at her, annoyed at the interruption. She squirmed but held his gaze. I don't have time to be straining my ears. Speak the hell up. Sorry, I said that I never took you as a reader. She was pointing a delicate finger at his book. He decided to be generous for once and humor her. He was capable of that, right? A half-decent conversation with a human being. Me neither, but I had to find other forms of entertainment. Torturing puppies and eating babies becomes tedious after a while. He half expected her to take his words literally and storm off. She was so naive he could almost smell her nativity alongside the fruity scent of her hair. She was too unhardened for his liking. He guessed that she had lived a sheltered life and was oblivious to the darker realities of the world. He knew her type, pampered, spoilt. The only way she knew how to receive anything was on a diamond-encrusted silver platter. She knew nothing about true pain, nothing about lacking. She knew nothing about wishing you were never born. I'm glad, said the girl. We would have ended up with a baby shortage. It seemed that she was capable of understanding satire. At least she wasn't both pathetically soft and dim-witted. You should give human flesh a try. It's unlike anything you've ever tasted, he said. The girl's lips twitched into something resembling a smile. I prefer sweet things, she answered before slightly tilting her head. I've also heard that human flesh leaves a horrible aftertaste. All right, perhaps he was a bit entertained by the conversation. That's why mouthwash was invented. A titter flowed out of her mouth. Her laugh was refined. She did not cackle and howl like a foul-mouthed fisherman's daughter. He shifted his attention back to his book. He soon found his mind drifting from what he was reading. Images of his mother, her throat sliced and bloody, intruded into his mind. He remembered the way she had wept in the dream, her devastation. What would his mother say if she saw him right now? Would she even recognize him as her son? Would she still love him despite who he had become? His memories recounted Itachi's screams. He tightened his grip on his book and squeezed his eyes. He was afraid that he would see Itachi's face. It was the smell of grass, the hardness of the tree against his back and the girl's fragrance that brought him back. No, he was not trapped inside a nightmare but sitting under the shade of a tree at Training Ground 3. When he opened his eyes, he found the girl watching him intently. Something erupted inside him. The fragile dam wall that held back his anger gave way. What the hell are you looking at, you damn Hyuga? He growled, his eyes spewing venom at the girl. He so wished she could say it. Just so he would have an excuse to hurt her. He wanted her to hurt, to feel the pain life had inflicted on him. And then what would that accomplish? Would that bring back Itachi? Would it bring back his clan? Would it stop the nightmares? Would it erase his mistakes? Would it plug the gaping hole inside him and fill his emptiness? What had been an inferno of anger was now a dying flame. He exhaled slowly and rested his head against the tree. The girl resumed reading without so much as a comment. He felt a twinge of a feeling he was very well acquainted with, guilt. He did not know why he felt guilty. He did not know this girl. He owed her nothing, but still, as tiny as it was, the guilt was there. Had it been a few years ago, the thought of apologizing for anything would never have occurred to him, but forgiveness was one of the very few things he wanted these days. About what just happened, pride held his tongue and forbade him from continuing. The girl looked at him curiously. I don't understand what Sasuke-san is talking about. She understood what he was talking about. He could see it in her eyes. She wanted to pretend that the incident had never transpired. The girl was saving him the trouble of doing the uncomfortable by feigning ignorance. The girl progressively seemed less naive than he had initially thought her to be. At this rate, she was steadily becoming one of the more tolerable ones in his eyes. It was not long before she stood. I have to go, Sasuke-san. Goodbye. She lingered and fiddled with her book instead of leaving. Sasuke-san, what was it now? Did she want to tell him to take a bath again? I showered this morning, he said. The girl seemed confused. A spark of realization ignited in her lavender eyes. A crimson blush dusted her porcelain face. No, Sasuke-san, I didn't. I wanted to say, I meant that, you see. He observed her with a raised eyebrow as she stumbled over her words. She drew in a deep breath and then another. She eventually smiled. Have a nice day, Sasuke-san. Brr, 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 went the alarm clock. Hinata drowsily fumbled with the alarm clock, growing frustrated as she struggled to silence the maddening noise. She succumbed to the temptation of resting her eyes for a moment, but she had no intention of falling back asleep. The smell of burning food woke her from the sleep she had succumbed to despite her wishes. She threw off her bedcovers and scrambled out of bed. She was running late for her morning shift. The coolness of the floor stung her feet as a wave of dizziness swept over her. The dizziness was her punishment for getting on her feet so abruptly after lying down all night. She rubbed the sleep from her eyes as she stumbled her way out of her bedroom. "Hold still, Mirai," Kurenai shouted from the bathroom at the end of the hallway. Mirai responded by decimating the peace with her shrill crying. She grumbled about her early shift in a manner that was guaranteed to elicit a judgmental shake of the head from the exceptionally poised older women of the Hyuga clan. It was too early for all that screaming. "I'm sorry for shouting. Mommy is sorry, baby." Mirai's cries only sharpened. "Hinata, the fish is burning." "I'm on it, thanks," answered Kurenai. "No, Mirai, don't put that in your mouth." She entered the kitchen. Counters with dark gray countertops lined the walls of the kitchen and cream marble tiles covered the floor. The cozy kitchen was dear to her. It felt more like home than the splendorous kitchen at the Hyuga Manor. She coughed as she switched off the smoking grill plate. The undersides of the salmon fillets were charred. The fish was unsalvageable. Kurenai marched into the kitchen with Mirai on her hip. Mirai was pulling her mother's ebony hair. Mirai noticed Hinata's presence and started giggling and fidgeting. The toddler stretched out her arms to Hinata. Kurenai looked at Hinata pleadingly. The child beamed as she took her from Kurenai. She smiled back at the toddler. Why Kurenai's daughter adored her so much was a mystery, but Mirai's affection never failed to make her smile or turn a terrible day into a slightly less terrible day. "Hey, Mirai-chan, did you sleep well?" Mirai broke into a fit of giggles. "I swear she likes you more than she likes her mother." Kurenai poked the charred fish and sighed. 14 hours of labor and this betrayal is the thanks I get." She flashed Kurenai a cheeky smile. "It's about working smart, not hard." Kurenai rolled her eyes. "No one likes a sore winner, Hinata." Kurenai set the plates on the round dining table and served the food. "Did you sleep all right?" Kurenai asked as they began eating. A lie flowed out of her mouth effortlessly. "I slept great. How about you?" She was not proud of lying to the woman who was simultaneously like an older sister and a mother to her, but there was no alternative. "Nei-chan," she began. She rarely called Kurenai sensei these days. What did giving birth feel like? Kurenai raised her eyebrows and leaned back in her chair. "Who's the smooth talker who has you thinking about motherhood?" Heat accumulated on her face. She shifted in her seat. "It's not like that. I was just curious." Kurenai squinted at her. She could feel Kurenai weighing her to determine whether she was being honest. "I certainly hope so. Men are trouble, Hinata. They just string you along and promise you the world, then they take what they want and leave you broken." Kurenai's voice mellowed. "There are exceptions, of course. Asuma was an exception." A sad smile crept on Kurenai's face as her red eyes glistened. "He promised me the world and tried his best to give it to me." Her own eyes began to sting. She could not imagine how it felt to be in Kurenai's shoes. Kurenai watched her daughter as she munched on a carrot slice. "I hope you find a man like your father when you grow up." "Anything interesting happen at the maternity ward yesterday?" Kurenai said after a round of silence. She tried her best to ignore the vestige of grief in her former sensei's eyes. "Not really. Mito-san keeps being difficult. I did a tiny mistake and she lost her temper and told me that the hospital is not the Hyuga Manor, so I cannot do as I please." Mito was the middle-aged head medic in the maternity ward. The woman had a vendetta against her for reasons beyond her knowledge. "Don't let her get to you. Whatever she hates you for is not your fault." She nodded. Mito would not deter her from doing her job. She would not give up just because her superior was incredibly obnoxious. Her job was not glamorous, but no one knew how important it was to her. It made her feel as if she was a tad less of a. "I saw the Uchiha the other day," Kurenai revealed as she fed Mirai. "Sasuke, the one and only. I almost didn't recognize him. He's as thin as a stick and so worn out. I think he's going through some heavy stuff," Kurenai continued as she scooped a spoonful from Mirai's tiny pink bowl. Mirai defiantly turned her face away when her mother brought her little yellow plastic spoon to her mouth. "Give me a break, okay, sweetheart, I'm not in the mood to fight you about eating." She had been unable to expel Sasuke Uchiha from her thoughts after their first encounter at the Yoshino tree. Seeing him impacted her more than she preferred to admit. Who could have imagined that the proud Uchiha would pine away into such a sorry sight right before their eyes? "It's tragic," Kurenai nodded. All those years of being insanely motivated just so he would become so jaded at such a young age, said Kurenai. He'd be better off if he stopped isolating himself in the forest. She washed the dishes when they finished eating. She took care of the house chores and cooked as much as possible. She also looked after Mirai when the situation demanded it. She had moved in with Kurenai after leaving the Hyuga manor to make the single mother's life easier. Selflessness and a sense of duty were not her only reasons for easing Kurenai's load. There was another reason, one she would never dare say out loud. Life had marched on after the Fourth Shinobi World War. Life had regained a semblance of normalcy after the greatest conflict in shinobi history. She was under no illusions though. Some things would never return to the way they were before the war. Many men and women had lost their lives. Children had been left orphaned. Mothers had been left sonless, fathers daughterless. Men of great stature and pride had been left crippled and bowed. Many had been left to pick up the pieces. She often wondered if they could pick up the pieces or if the pieces had been stolen by the wind and were beyond recovery. Hinata, wait up. Ino was hot on her trail amidst the early morning buzz of the street. Ino's golden hair radiated beneath the rays of the sun as she jogged towards her. A few men were gawking at her. What kind of man would not pause and stare at a blonde stunner in a sultry purple outfit jogging down the street? Ino caught up to her and fell into step beside her. Ooh, you look extra hot today. I think I'm feeling a little gay for you. Did you do something with your hair, Hina-chan? She rolled her eyes but blushed nonetheless. Good morning to you too, Ino-chan. She was not sure how and when it had happened, but Ino had become her closet female friend. Being close to Ino was a blessing. Ino had a big heart even though she liked to pretend to be heartier than she was. There was hardly a dull moment with Ino. She was fun and always up to date with the village grapevine. Another day of having the old hag bark at you. Why can't she be nice to you for once? It's a good thing you're so sweet. I would have given her a beating by now. She smiled. It's a good thing I'm not you. You can't just beat your superior because you don't like her. Ino grinned. And that is what's wrong with the world. Yeah, maybe it's a good thing you're not me. I would be such an embarrassment if I had your chest and booty specs. The whole village would be sick of me showing off. Stop it, Ino-chan, she laughed. Maybe the hag doesn't like you because you're such a hard worker. You put in 5 times the effort everyone else puts in that ward. They turned into a different street. A gray-haired vendor shamelessly eyed them as they walked past his stall. Ew, why is he looking at us like that? He's old enough to be our grandfather. Ino gagged for emphasis. Why do you keep up with it, Hina? Why do you keep on working so hard when your supervisor is such a bitch to you? Why did she work so hard? What stopped her from becoming demotivated? It was the same secret reason why she worked so hard to ease the burden of motherhood on Kurenai. I don't know, it's just the way I am, I guess, she lied. An aloof black-haired youth was standing at the edge of the street with his hands in his pockets. He was aimlessly leaning against a building and seemingly content with slowly blinking his life away. Doesn't that kid remind you of Sasuke, Hina-chan? I wonder what Sasuke is up to these days. Her first encounter with Sasuke had risen from a moment of spontaneousness that had caused her to find an outdoor spot where she could read. Little had she known that she would end up in Sasuke's company. She did not know what was tormenting Sasuke, but her intuition told her he was internally bleeding from being devoured by dark thoughts. He was internally bleeding just like her. The only difference was that Sasuke's condition was direr than her own. She was sitting on the railing of her bedroom balcony, legs dangling 6 floors above the ground. There was movement in the street even at 10 p.m. Konoha never really went to sleep. The stars were putting on a show as always. Nature's best work of art brought a smile to her face. A genuine smile and not the fake one she had perfected, the one she would slip on when she frequently pretended she was okay even though the opposite was true. Stargazing had a special significance to her. The infinite, star-spangled heavens connected her to her deceased mother. They were faded but they were there, memories of watching the stars in the gardens of the Hyuga Manor with her mother. She was grateful that she still carried memories of her mother, hazy as they were. It was thanks to those memories that she remembered her mother telling her time and time again that she could touch the sky as long as she believed in herself. Age had taught her that believing in yourself was sometimes not enough. Believing in yourself was not sufficient to propel you to the sky. She had dreamed of mounting great heights all her life, but her feet were shackled to the ground. The universe refused to allow her to touch the sky. The same could not be said for Hanabi. Hanabi had touched the sky. Hanabi soared high like fireworks, her namesake. She was a failure. She had failed to be the heiress her clan needed, and she had failed to be the lover Naruto needed. It pained her immensely to think of what Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura and many of her peers had accomplished were accomplishing. Shikamaru was one of the Hokage's most influential advisors. Sakura was on her way to becoming the most renowned medic in the world. Naruto and Sasuke had saved the entire world. What could she possibly boast of? Being a teammate to Kiba and Shino. Being a lowly, unappreciated medic at the hospital. Twice, her life had been spared at a cost too great. She was the root of the chain of events that had led to her uncle's execution. As if being the reason for his father's death was not enough, Neji had died so that she could live. A failure like her did not deserve such sacrifices. She resented her cousin's decision to forfeit his life for her. Why had she been the one to survive? Had she survived so she could perpetuate this cycle of failure? So that she could be a mockery of Neji's death? Months had passed since Neji's death, nearly a year in fact, but the pain was still as potent as ever. Her throat started closing up. No, she would not cry for Neji. Not tonight. She resisted her grief, but the tears came anyway. It was funny, wasn't it? She had been a failure for so long, but she still cried over it. Nearly 18 years of failure was not enough for her to grow accustomed to it. That in itself was another failure. Her feelings of inadequacy were the reason she worked so diligently at the hospital. It was a major part of the reason why she lived with Kurenai. It was all a desperate attempt to feel as if she had some sort of impact on the world. It was a desperate effort to feel as if her existence was not meaningless. People thought compassion was what drove her to help others. Compassion was merely half the reason. The rest was all about her. Being capable of leading her clan had eventually become all about her. Being strong was only partly about protecting others. She wanted her worth to be felt. She wanted to silence that voice, her lifelong companion, that constantly told her she was not and never would be enough. She was not the sweet, selfless doll most people thought her to be. She was selfish and self-serving. Would everyone look at her the same way if they truly knew her motivations? She was tired of waking up and facing her worthlessness every day. Her ability to persevere was waning. If she did not prove to herself that she was worth something, she was not sure how long she could carry on. She needed to soar, to feel the clouds. She needed to achieve greatness. Her story could not end like this. She could not die as a forgotten princess, a useless heiress who was cast away in favor of her younger sister. It was the only way for her to be finally happy. She would keep on fighting. She would prove to herself and everyone else that her existence was not negligible. The chances of reclaiming her birthright were as slim as they could be. She did not care whether her clan took her back, but her story could not conclude with failure. Sasuke searched within and without himself for a reason to get out of bed that morning and found nothing. How would it feel to sleep and sleep forevermore? To sink into the deep and never resurface? How he sometimes wished to end the pointless cycle, to put an end to his bleak reality and offer himself to oblivion. Today was one of those days where the voice telling him to end it spoke loudest. He was tired, so damn tired. He was exhausted from being haunted by his sins. Exhausted from thinking about the people he had betrayed and the trail of corpses he had left in his path as Orochimaru's follower. His regrets and his lack of purpose were suffocating him. He was tired of being alone. He often romanticized his solitude and pretended to himself that he preferred it. The loneliness was heavy on his soul. He despised the solitude but felt paralyzed by it. Envy gripped him whenever he saw people laughing and chatting with one another in the streets. He too longed for companionship, but the disease in his soul made it unbearable to mingle with others. Behind the curtain of his eyelids, he saw death claiming him. He did not fight the thoughts, they were now just as much a part of him as the marrow in his bones. He allowed the images to bury him like the slow in an avalanche. His heartbeat quickened as the images came to him. What was there to stop him from taking his own life at that very moment? His katana was right there in the corner, beckoning him to end it all. Unlike books, death would not be such a fleeting escape. He sat up in his futon and stole guilty glances at his katana as though he were a married man drinking in the figure of another woman. He rose and walked over to the sword. His fingers trembled as he unsheathed the blade. A shudder traveled down his back on a hot, humid day. He was disgusted by the reflection on the blade, by the deterioration he saw in himself. He pressed his forefinger against the edge of the katana. Rich velvet stained the blade. The pain was satisfying. A stab to the heart, 2 slashes across each wrist, or perhaps a slash against the jugular. That would be all it took. Heart, wrists, jugular, stomach, maybe. So that he would not fade too gently into the abyss but slowly and painfully. So that he would sink into the deep as slowly and painfully as his brother whose descent into the deep had begun with a single cough years prior to his final breath. Eternal rest was in that blade of steel. He was dead inside. What difference would it make if his body followed suit? He grasped the worn hilt of the katana with his only hand and positioned the blade over his jugular. He would fade swiftly into the night. He was too much of a coward for it to be any other way. He closed his eyes. He would never have to face the ugliness of this world again. The moment of truth had come, but paralysis had settled into his limbs. Just like the previous times. The simple motion of slashing his neck was too hefty a task to carry out. He screamed his frustration out and threw the katana at the wall like a javelin. The blade bounced off the wall. He ran to the bathroom and fell on his knees before the toilet bowl. He had expected to vomit but nothing came up. He languished on the floor. He was a pathetic sight of malnourished limbs, demons and wasted talent. He thought of his former teammates. Naruto was spearheading the unification of the shinobi world and being groomed to be the next Hokage. Sakura was swiftly climbing up the ranks of Konoha Hospital. Kakashi was Hokage. They all had a reason to wake up in the morning. He needed a reason to leave his cabin. Anything to distract him from himself. He needed to get away because he currently did not trust himself with his life. In the end, his depleted rice reserves gave him a reason. Not all grocery store aisles were equal. There was one aisle in every grocery store that was superior to the rest. The aisle with instant ramen. He savored the scene before him, various brands and flavors of instant ramen in all their majesty. The sight never grew tiresome. The man who owned the store occupied a special place in his heart. He had welcomed him into his store during the earlier years of his life when nearly every other business had refused him service. The man was one of the few people like Yuki. Reflecting on his childhood made his eyes sting. He would be lying if he claimed the emotional scars from those days had completely healed. He was cutting down on ramen. It was not by choice but part of his grooming. According to Kakashi, actively limiting himself to one serving of ramen per day would help develop his restraint. He was 2 days into the exercise and the strain was already killing him. How was he supposed to limit himself to one packet of ramen when there was a slew of options? Look, Okazen, it's Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto paid the young voice no mind. He was too engrossed in a crucial decision. Spicy chicken or roast beef? He could nearly taste the zing of the spicy chicken. He could equally taste the roast beef. He licked his lips as his brain fabricated the taste. Something pulled his pant leg but he ignored it in favor of the important matter at hand. The pulling continued. Spicy chicken or roast beef? The pulling turned frantic. What? He looked down. A child, 6 years old at most, was pulling his pant leg. A woman of about 30 was frowning at them a few meters away. Hey, kid, what's up? He made an effort to soften his voice and smile. You're Naruto. It took him a moment to notice that his face was printed on the child's black t-shirt. He felt a tingle in his gut. I guess I am, he answered with a grin. Stop bothering Naruto-san, dear. He's very busy. The woman watching them berated. The child paid no heed to his mother. His eyes were sparkling with excitement. Can you fly? Even better, kid, I can make 1,000 clones of myself. 3 shadow clones appeared next to him. The sparkle in the child's eyes dulled. So you can't fly? Naruto's grin faltered. He felt the urge to look anywhere but at the child. Nope, the kid pouted. Ah, that's so lame. You're supposed to be the most powerful shinobi but you can't fly. That's enough, Hayato, the mother said before pulling her son away. Making 1,000 clones of yourself is way cooler than flying, he defended. The mother and son were already out of earshot. Dumb kid. He shook his head and grabbed both the spicy chicken and roast beef flavor and headed to the till. Screw both the kid and Kakashi's stupid exercise. As he exited the store, he noticed a shock of raven hair down the street. He could not see the person's face but he could recognize Sasuke's walk anywhere. He had chosen to give Sasuke space to resolve his issues. Perhaps space and time were all Sasuke needed to conquer his demons and become whole again. He did not blame his friend for his state. He could not fault him for grappling with the darkness in his life. Sasuke Uchiha was not Naruto Uzumaki. That was the most painful and yet most liberating truth to accept. Hey, Sasuke, wait up. Like with the ramen, he would put aside restraint for the moment. Sasuke would have his space tomorrow. Wait up, I know you can hear me. Don't ignore me, Sasuke. Sasuke. Sasuke stirred his ramen disinterestedly. The bowl in front of him had failed to move his appetite. Naruto was running his mouth from the stool beside him. Naruto did not seem deterred by the fact that the conversation was one-sided. He relentlessly ran his mouth, Naruto in between, cramming food into his mouth like a starved pig. It was a morbid sight. It destroyed what little appetite he had initially possessed. The street was bustling. It was always like that at the food district. People rushing to or from their next meal, people laughing in a manner only a person who had filled their belly with delicious food could laugh. It was unsettling how happy people generally seemed. He was not naive. Everyone had their struggles. Still, these people's lives seemed to glow with a joy that was foreign to him. He envied them. A random villager called out Naruto every so often. Naruto was 2 autographs shy of being the biggest celebrity in Konoha. He had saved the world just as much as Naruto had, but he was miles behind Naruto in terms of public favor. The looks he received and the whispers that followed him were the opposite of how Naruto was treated. He usually never agreed to eat out with Naruto. The incident in the morning was to blame for his submission. "You boys aren't getting any younger," began Tyuki, the owner of the ramen bar. "It might be time to start searching for someone to settle down with." The ramen chef was looming over the wooden counter with a smile that was meant to persuade. His thick arms were crossed over his white apron. "If you don't settle down, Sasuke, you might end up being the last Uchiha," said Tyuki. Naruto stiffened. He lifted his eyes from his barely touched ramen bowl and slammed his chopsticks on the counter. The ramen chef already seemed to regret his statement. "Did I ask for your damn opinion?" The ramen chef shook his head. "So shut the hell up." He felt his eyes growing extra moist and looked away from the old man. The ramen bar was as silent as a cemetery. He felt Naruto's disapproval but did not care. This old man had no right to speak of his clan. "I should break your legs for saying that." He knew the old man's spine was steadier than most when the man did not flinch. "That's enough, Sasuke. Back off," Naruto warned with a combative glint in his eye. "I won't let you threaten him while I'm here. Never." The old man's daughter peeked her head out of the kitchen. He was about to stand up and leave when Naruto turned to the street and exclaimed with exaggerated joy. "Hey, Kiba, what are you guys doing here?" A trio approached the ramen bar and stopped by the entrance. It consisted of Kiba, a guy wearing a trench jacket and shades, and the girl he had sat with under the Yoshino tree. "What are you guys doing here?" Naruto repeated. "What do you think we're doing in Konoha? We live here, dumbass." Naruto showed Kiba the middle finger. "Shut up, dog breath. I wasn't talking to you." Kiba lifted his chin. "Oh really, moron? Then why were you looking at me?" He was not interested in Naruto and Kiba's brainless exchange. His eye was on the girl. "Hey, Hinata-chan." The girl waved at Naruto with a meager smile. The overgrown, white-furred mutt beside her was wagging its tail and staring at him. A mutt lover, a quiet sunglass-wearing guy and a pale-eyed girl were a peculiar mix of people. Wait, wasn't the quiet guy Shino Aburame from the academy? Kiba, Shino-in. The pieces of the puzzle moved into place. The unrelenting itch at the back of his mind was finally scratched. She was Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame's genin teammate. The Hyuga heiress, he remembered. She was the weird girl who always wore heavy jackets even during the unbearable heat of summer. She was the cripplingly timid girl he had pitied the same way one would pity a cripple or a starving stray. Was that really her? Was that the girl with the terrible stutter? He felt compelled to take a proper look at her. Their eyes met. She smiled at him, her gaze steady. He found no hint of timidness. Yes, that was Hinata Hyuga, but the difference was nearly irreconcilable. "We have to go," announced Shino. "Lighten up, Shino," said Kiba. The mutt barked as if in agreement with its master. "We're not in a hurry, right Hinata?" Shino and Hinata shared a look. "Shino-kun is right, Kiba-kun," whispered Hinata. She was still as soft-spoken as the Hinata Hyuga from his childhood, but her voice was now tinged with previously non-existent confidence. His eyes connected with Hinata's once more as she said goodbye to them. He watched her until the trio disappeared. He felt Naruto's stare. "What do you want? What, do you like Hinata or something? What's with the staring? What's it to you?" Naruto gave nothing away, but the Hokage hopeful's lack of an answer was an answer in itself, even though he could not decipher its meaning. Naruto grinned after a tense moment of silence. It was typical of Naruto to hide his true feelings behind an easy smile and clownery. "You know what would be better than a bowl of ramen?" Naruto sang before wiggling his eyebrows. "I'm going home, Dobi." He stood up and grabbed the plastic bag containing the rice he had purchased. Hey, I didn't even get to say what I wanted to say. I don't care, I'm going home, but you didn't even finish your ramen. Naruto protested with his palms held out. He rolled his eyes. Old man, he called out. The ramen chef poked his head out of the kitchen. The tension between them from earlier had not completely melted. Charge my meal on Naruto's tab. Naruto was already helping himself to his barely touched ramen. Hey, Tyuki grinned and waved dismissively. Don't sweat it, kid. It's on the house. It's not every day that two of Konoha's most famous shinobi eat at my place. It's good for business. He went his way. Geez, thanks for hanging out with me, Naruto. I'll see you around, Naruto. Naruto said from the ramen bar. When he arrived home, silence, stale air and the katana he had thrown against the wall were waiting for him. Hinata was still reeling from seeing Naruto as they walked to Yakiniku-Q. She had poured so much time, energy and affection into Naruto. She had pinned her hopes and dreams on him. She had been love-struck to the point of sacrificing her life for him fighting pain. They had gone on 4 dates. She had been so elated that they were progressing romantically, she had even forgotten a little about Neji. They had shared their first kiss, a magical kiss in her opinion, on their 4th date. And then Naruto had broken up with her 3 days later. The reason? He said that he felt no romantic connection to her and that he knew in his heart that he would never feel anything even if he tried. She had cried herself to sleep and barely eaten for 2 days. She had fought so hard to improve herself but Naruto had still not loved her in the end. There had been only one moment in her life where she had felt more worthless, the day she was denounced as an heiress. She did not resent Naruto. She did not expect him to force himself to love her. 4 months had passed since the breakup. She had somehow picked up the pieces of her shattered heart and moved on. At least she liked to believe that she had moved on. Her reaction to seeing him suggested differently. Her foolishness was to blame for how destitute Naruto's rejection had left her feeling. She had invested too much of her heart in him. Never again. She had learned her lesson. Next time, she would not give her heart so easily, so fully. A nudge into her side rescued her from her thoughts. She looked up at her reserved friend. Kiba was walking ahead of them. She realized she had been trailing after Kiba and Shino and that the latter had fallen back to walk with her. What's wrong? The sound of Shino's steady baritone soothed her rattled nerves and she found herself smiling at him. Shino was a rock she could always lean on. He never needed to say much to comfort her. They were outside Yakiniku-Q, Asuma's favorite restaurant. She saw Ino, Choji and Shikamaru at a booth through the glass front of the restaurant. Ino and Shikamaru were laughing as Choji related something to them. Nothing important, she said to Shino as they made their way into the restaurant. The bright rays of the sun awakened Sasuke. He blinked away the blurriness of sleep. There was a steady tap that was vibrating in the room. A bird was tapping its beak against the window. He was in a good mood. Well, in as much of a good mood as he could manage lately. He had not had any nightmares or experienced any insomnia throughout the night and that alone warranted his good mood. The joints of his feet snapped as he rose from his futon. He stretched his numb limbs, dragged himself to the kitchen and drank some water before going out barefooted. The leaves of the forest shook in the morning breeze. The sun was still warming up. He took a deep breath of fresh air. It filled his lungs with vitality. A lone bird with snow-white feathers flew over his head. The color of the bird's feathers reminded him of Suigetsu. What had become of his squad of misfits? He felt like eating today. On rare days like these he would mysteriously wake up with an appetite. He returned inside with the intention of cooking breakfast. He longed for tomatoes. He entered the kitchen once more. As he was rinsing tomatoes, his eyes wandered to the dust-covered calendar that was perched on the wall above the kitchen sink. His blood ran cold as he realized what day it was. It was the 6th of October. He returned the tomatoes to the fridge. He had given up on the idea of cooking because he had just lost his appetite. Hinata found herself at the training grounds. Their home was being fumigated and so they had to stay away from the area for at least 6 hours. There was a pest outbreak that was taking place in their area. Kurenai and Mirai were spending the day with Anko. Her unofficial mother had seen it as an opportunity to catch up with her old friend. Hinata had gone to the Yamanaka flower shop in search of Ino a few hours ago. Mrs. Yamanaka had told her that Ino was out of the village on a C-rank mission. Ino had informed her of this mission but the whole thing had slipped her mind. She had ended up assisting Mrs. Yamanaka for a while. Ino was out of the village. Kiba spent his time with his family on Sundays. Shino had taken a leave of absence and was out on a personal research trip. Shikamaru was scarce and Choji was helping out at his clan's restaurant today. There was no one she could pay a visit to, no one within her inner circle at least. She did not work on Sundays, but she had entertained the thought of going to assist at work. She had decided against it in the end. She was not in the mood of being bullied by her mean-spirited superior. She stood up and stretched, her back was becoming stiff. She sat down and took a sip from her water bottle and resumed reading. She was extremely engrossed in the story. Despite that, her attention started waning and she slowly drifted asleep. Mirai had been unwell yesterday and had kept them up until the early hours of the morning. She was nearly dead asleep when her senses picked up on an approaching presence. Her eyes snapped open in all alertness. She recognized the approaching figure. It was Sasuke. She watched him as he drew nearer. It had been 3 weeks since she had seen him. She gulped. Sasuke looked like something out of a horror movie. He reminded her of the stereotypical portrayal of the living dead. She grown familiar with seeing a Sasuke that seemed exhausted by life, but she had never seen him like this before. She had never seen him so down. His eyes were hollow and unfocused. He walked as if he was sleeping walking, as if he was not fully aware of his surroundings. He sat down beside her and tossed a glance at her. She could not resist fidgeting under his gaze. "What's wrong, Sasuke-san?" she asked. She had to gather all her courage to ask that question. He did not reply. She had never expected him to reply. She went back to her book. It was impossible to focus on it with Sasuke being so melancholic. She felt awkward. She felt as if the awkwardness was choking her to death. Perhaps she had to leave. Yes, it was better to give Sasuke his space. She closed her book and opened her mouth to say goodbye. "It's the 6th of October today. My mother's birthday," said Sasuke. Hinata closed her mouth. She never would have imagined that Sasuke would tell her what was bothering him. They were not friends, they were little more than strangers. What made it more unlikely for Sasuke to tell her what was bothering her, more than the fact that they barely knew one another, was that he was Sasuke Uchiha. People like Sasuke did not go around talking about things that weighed on their hearts. People like Sasuke never exposed their vulnerability. "I'm sorry," she said. She said it because it was the only thing she could think of saying. Sasuke did not react to her words. She assumed that he had not heard her. "Why are you sorry? You did not even know her," said Sasuke. She was sorry because she understood what losing a mother felt like. She was sorry because she knew the pain that it caused. "I remember when Itachi gave me money to buy her a gift for her birthday. I was a child at the time and I could not resist spending it all on candy," Sasuke said with a faraway look on his face. "I told myself I would buy her a gift on her next birthday." Hinata had a sinking feeling what the conclusion of the story was. That birthday had never come. That realization brought her close to tears. It was a heartbreaking tale. Sasuke's words stabbed her right in the most sensitive part of her heart. His words pained her because they were relatable. Her mother's death was a deep scar that she carried with her, one she doubted would ever fade. As Sasuke sat there and mourned his mother, she also mourned her own mother. She was staring at him from the corner of her eye. It was hard to carry on looking at him, so she looked away. Unfathomably powerful shinobi such as Sasuke were just not supposed to look the way he looked at the moment. She would cook the largest meals on her birthday. I would get home from the academy and she would hug me longer than she did on other days and tell me to take a bath before dinner, Sasuke said in a lifeless voice. After dinner she would tell us how much she loved us and how thankful she was that we were in her life. She listened on silently, not daring to say a word in case she said something that would make him retreat into his shell. The sun was shining brightly and the sweet song of the birds flowed in the air like soft silk. It was a beautiful day. Mother Nature was not sympathetic to Sasuke's suffering. "You never know what you have until it's ripped away from you," said Sasuke. She painfully dragged her eyes to Sasuke's own. His dojutsu was deactivated and yet his eyes were bloodshot. He tore his eyes away from hers when they made contact. Sasuke felt foolish. He had blundered. He had told Hinata Hyuga things he had not even told Naruto. He had showed her his most vulnerable side. Everything within him had protested against telling her what was bothering him. He did not trust her. They were from the same village, but he did not trust her. He did not just give his trust to anyone. But he was human and he was hurting and did not know what to do with the pain. So he had revealed things to her. Things he would never have told anyone if he was in the right state of mind. It had been reckless of him to do so. Shinobi had a tendency of using your weaknesses against you. He consoled himself with the knowledge that he was just human. Everyone had their moments of weakness. He was not proud of his weakness, but he would accept it and move on. The damage had already been done and he could never rectify it. The only way to erase the mistake he had committed, the only way to make it disappear, would be to eliminate Hinata Hyuga. Within a second, he imagined multiple ways in which he could get rid of her. No one would ever find her. But he could not do that. He was tired of fighting, tired of killing and tired of hurting people. My mother's birthday would have been 2 months ago, whispered Hinata. Sasuke turned towards her. He noticed the tears gathering in her large eyes. He noticed how tightly her fingers were wrapped around the book in her lap. I wonder if father even remembers her birthday, she continued. Her voice was trembling. I often wonder what it would be like if she was still here. Would everything be so? Quote. A cold realization slapped into his face. He would have never guessed at first glance, but it was obvious. Hinata understood what he was going through. She knew the pain of losing a mother. She was as haunted by her mother's death as much as he was. He could hear it in her voice. He could see it in her eyes. What happened to her? He said. He was looking at her, but she was not looking at him. A few tears finally escaped her eyes and flowed down her porcelain skin. She hurriedly wiped them away. She died giving birth to Hanabi, replied Hinata. She was not like the others. She did not resent me for being who I am. She loved me just as I was, whispered Hinata. She was everything to me. It was on that day that he realized that there was far more to Hinata Hyuga than what met the eye. Something compelled him to think that she was not the naive girl he had assumed she was. He had assumed that she was the type of person that knew nothing about loss and pain. He had been mistaken. From the sound of it, Hinata Hyuga was well acquainted with loss and pain. She was so kind and compassionate. She made me believe I could achieve anything I could dream of. Quote. Sounds like she was a wonderful person, said Sasuke. He shocked himself. He was not aware that he was capable of uttering compassionate words. She was, Hinata replied with a tense smile on her face. The smile of a person that was desperately trying not to break down. They barely knew each other but confiding in each other about their deceased mothers. Strangely, it did not feel wrong. The pain of losing his mother had not faded, not even a little bit, but a strange feeling had taken hold of him. It was almost as if the newfound feeling was countering the pain. The newfound feeling was a balm to an excruciatingly painful wound. The balm did not close the wound. It just soothed it a bit. And that alone had an enormous effect considering the magnitude of the pain the wound brought. The feeling was brought by the realization that someone understood his pain. Right here next to him was someone who understood his pain on some level, someone who felt the pain he felt. He felt the tension in his shoulders easing just a little bit, the crushing weight on his chest lessening and the pain in his heart reducing. He realized that the voices in his head, the ones that haunted him day and night, had softened a little. Was Hinata feeling the same way? What are you reading? Sasuke said to the pale-skinned girl next him. The samurai and the blind servant, Hinata whispered while holding up the book. Romance, he replied. She nodded. He leaned his head against the tree and took a deep breath. He moved his hand across the grass. The sharp blades of grass ran between his fingers. Romance, how nauseating, he said. Love isn't nauseating, Sasuke-san, replied Hinata. Her voice was always just above a whisper. But the way it is portrayed definitely is, Sasuke ridiculed. He noticed the glimmer of an emotion he could not describe in her eyes. He fully turned his face in Hinata's direction. What? Said Sasuke. It's nothing, she whispered. The girl looked at him for a while. She had a mysterious hint of a smile on her face. He scowled in annoyance. Spit it out already. Quote, you sound as if you're familiar with the genre. Have you explored romance novels before? Said Hinata. He could see the mischief in her eyes. Don't be ridiculous, he replied. His voice was colder than ice and twice as piercing. Hinata shifted her gaze to the pair of tiny birds that were watching them from the branch above them. A knowing smile was plastered on her face. He searched his insides. The temporary relief he had found had not yet faded. The pain of losing his mother still felt less acute. His gaze rested on Hinata as she stared at the birds. Her eyes had turned glossy. She was so distracted in her thoughts that she did not realize that he was watching her. Even though he was not proud of exposing himself like this to a girl he barely knew, his regret was greatly reduced by how he was currently feeling. The mysteriousness of the whole matter baffled him. Somehow sharing his pain with Hinata Hyuga and her sharing her pain with him had caused the pain to subside. Human nature had to be the most irrational thing in existence. Hinata berated herself for being absent-minded. Her absent-mindedness had stopped her from escaping while she had the chance. Lady Mimiko Hyuga inspected her with a grimace on her aged features. If Hinata had been younger, she would have broken eye contact and began nervously playing with her fingers, but she was no longer a child. Keep your chin up, Kurenai had often told her. She no longer had to remind it. She had stopped walking. She had not wanted to stop, but she had. The Hyuga clan had not completely lost the hold it had over her even though she had left it. Is that you, Hinata? Lady Mimiko ridiculed in a voice proud and calm. Good day, Lady Mimiko, Hinata said with a forced smile. What a disgrace you are to the Hyuga name, Lady Mimiko said with a sneer. Lady Mimiko slowly dragged her eyes up and down her form. Hinata felt excruciatingly uncomfortable. The way the old Hyuga elder was looking at her made her feel as if she was the lowest trash in Konoha. The street they were on was located in the quieter parts of Konoha. It was the part of Konoha that was filled with bookstores, stationery shops, art supply stores and the like. She preferred cutting through this part of town when she was not in the mood for the bustle of the busy streets of Konoha. Lady Mimiko was dressed in a floral silk kimono of high-quality make. Her gray hair was tied in a tight bun. The toll of the long years showed on her pale face. Her lavender eyes were cold and full of intelligence. Her hands were hidden in the sleeves of her kimono. She glanced at Lady Mimiko's aide. The aide's eyes warmed up when their eyes met. She was dressed in a modest gray kimono. She knew the aide. She knew most of the branch members. The daughter of the clan head distancing herself from the clan and living like a clanless orphan. How shameful, said Lady Mimiko. Hinata wanted to walk away. She did not want to stand around for this, but her feet refused to move. What madness possessed you to distance yourself from such a noble lineage? Lady Mimiko said in a biting tone. Hinata was not surprised by the acidity of Lady Mimiko's tone. Hinata knew her well. Her tongue was sharper than a sword. You have failed both yourself and your clan through your uncouth actions, said Lady Mimiko. Hinata wished that she would just stop talking and continue on her way. But can I really say I'm surprised? You have always been a horrible failure. Being a failure is the only thing you seem to be good at. Quote. She felt a head-splitting headache developing. It was as if the verbal blow Lady Mimiko had dealt to her was manifesting into physical pain. She wanted to disappear. She wished she could just disappear. She wished the earth could just open and swallow her whole just so she could get away from this woman's words. She failed to keep looking Lady Mimiko in the eyes as she looked at her aide. The young aide was looking at her with pity in her lavender eyes. You know, I tried to mold you into a worthy heiress for our noble clan. I tried to mold you into an heiress your mother would have been proud of, but I failed. Your uselessness would just not stop interfering, said Lady Mimiko. Her tone had lost some of its sharpness. The mention of her mother made her headache even more unbearable. She was waited for Lady Mimiko to make her leave in anticipation. Look how beautiful you are. Hyuga blood flows strong within your veins. What a waste, said Lady Mimiko. She slowly shook her head in pity. Lady Mimiko started walking away. Her aide followed a step behind her. Lady Mimiko walked with all the grace that a Hyuga of her standing could muster. She was glad that Lady Mimiko was leaving. She could not take any more. Just as relief wrapped around her like a warm blanket, Lady Mimiko started speaking again as she continued on her way. It was a blessing in disguise that your mother passed away as young as she did, said Lady Mimiko. Hinata's vision blurred. Her heart hammered in her chest. The shame of birthing you would have eventually killed her, and that, my dear, would have been an even greater tragedy. Hinata stood there motionless for the longest time with a hot burning sensation in her chest. Lady Mimiko's words kept on repeating in her mind. The doorbell of the flowers shop rang as Hinata pushed open the door. She immediately felt as if she was in a calmer state of being when she entered the shop. The shop was spacious but not too spacious, just big enough. The walls were painted in calm shades of orange and were lined with decorative trinkets and paintings. There were multiple rows of dark wooden tables below silver buckets with bouquets of numerous kinds of flowers inside them. The punchy hues of the flowers brightened the shop. The air was fresh and carried a sweet natural aroma. The Yamanaka flower shop was beautiful. She never got used to how beautiful and calming it was. It was one of her favorite places in Konoha. This place always managed to elevate her mood a bit. She passed the multiple rows of flowers. There were numerous customers strolling about and admiring the flowers. Her eyes kept glancing between the ocean of flowers. There was just something about the beauty of a flower that was not found anywhere else in nature. Most of the few memories she had of her mother were those of when they would visit the gardens together. She had been obsessed with flowers as a child. Her clanmates had called her unfocused and unintelligent for having a fixation on such insignificant little things. They had often told her that she was better suited for tending to flowers than being the heiress when she failed to meet their expectations. "Ah, Hinata, so good to see you," said a middle-aged woman. The woman had short pale brown hair, light golden skin and almond-colored eyes. Her physique was elegant but sturdy. She was an attractive woman. It was evident where Ino had gotten her looks from. Mrs. Yamanaka adored her. She could see it in her eyes. Ino had once joked that she had to be careful not to steal her mother away from her since mothers only came in once. "Hello Mrs. Yamanaka," Hinata said as she neared the counter. Mrs. Yamanaka was busy with a customer. She was dressed in a navy blue summer dress with a white apron over it. "Ino is on the roof," Mrs. Yamanaka said with a wide smile. Her eyes squinted when she smiled. Hinata's mood improved a bit more. Mrs. Yamanaka's smile made it seem as if all was right with the world. She smiled as though the love of her life and the father of her child had not been torn away from her a few months ago. Hinata made her way up the flight of stairs that led to the roof. The rays of the sun stabbed her as she made way out of the cellar door and onto the roof. "Hey Hinata," Ino called out. Ino was dressed in olive overalls and was tending to the flowers under the green net shade. Her hair was tied into a ponytail. She was carrying hand pruners in her hand. "Hi Ino," said Hinata. The roof of the flower shop was a garden. This was where the Yamanakas cultivated the flowers that were not cultivated by their foreign suppliers. There were numerous birds on the roof. The flowers attracted plenty of birds. They chirped as though they were without a trouble. She envied the birds. "Please hand me watering pot," said Ino. She carried the metal watering pot over to Ino and handed it to her. "I'll be done in a minute," said Ino. Ino was still on the active shinobi roster but she was barely active. She seldom went on missions outside the village anymore. She helped out at the hospital every now and sometimes worked in the administrative department by the Hokage Tower. Not being active was bad in terms of pay but that was not an issue for her. Business was booming at the flower shop. The entirety of Konoha and a few other villages depended on the Yamanaka flower shop for their flowers. Ino spent most of her time running the flower shop. Hinata could see that Ino loved what she did. She was always at her peak when she was working here. She also suspected that Ino spent so much time at the flower shop because she wanted to be close to her mother because of the death of her father. "What's wrong?" Ino said once she took a good look at her. Hinata looked away. "I bumped into Lady Mimiko on the way," she replied. "Wait, Lady Mimiko, Lady Mimiko," Ino tried to remember. "I remember now. You mean your clan's greatest she-devil," said Ino. She nodded. "And I'm guessing she said some less than nice things about you," said Ino. Her gray eyes were focused on the pot of flowers she was watering. "Less than nice is one way to put it," Hinata said with glimmering eyes. "That bitch," Inta said with a glimmer in her own eyes. "Come here." Ino put down the watering pot and embraced her. She smelled like wet soil and strawberry-scented shampoo. Hinata felt herself drawing strength from Ino. This was one of the reasons she loved Ino. She always tried her best to pick her up when she was down. They separated. "Let me change," said Ino. She entered the storeroom by the corner of the roof. Ino stepped out in a long purple skirt and a gray top that stopped just below her bosom, leaving the rest of her torso exposed. She was wearing a matching pair of purple shinobi sandals that reached her shins. If there was one word that could describe Ino Yamanaka, that word would be seductive. "Lunch awaits," said Ino. "You look beautiful Ino," Hinata said as they walked towards the cellar door. "Thanks Hina. If only I possessed your assets," said Ino. Hinata blushed. "No wonder you cover up so much. No man would survive catching a glimpse of your assets." Quote. "So what did the she-devil have to say to you?" Ino said before taking a sip of her beverage. They were at a restaurant. It was one of Hinata's favorites because they served the best cinnamon rolls in Konoha. Recalling Lady Mimiko's words destroyed her appetite all over again. She remembered how Lady Mimiko had spat words as sharp as a katana. She remembered how she had felt the urge to sit down after Lady Mimiko had claimed that her mother would have died from the shame of bearing such a useless daughter. She would have preferred a broken arm instead of hearing those words. Words were much more painful than broken bones. "It's fine Hinata. You don't have to tell me," said Ino. Her tone was full of regret and held a hint of pity. Ino had probably noticed the melancholy in her eyes. She took a bite from the cinnamon roll. The cinnamon roll that had caused her mouth to burst with flavor just moments ago was now bland. She told me what I've been told my whole life, she said. That I'm a failure. Ino averted her eyes. They were filled with sympathy. But beyond that they were filled with another emotion, anger. Ino took a sip of her drink. Hinata wiped her mouth with a serviette. A group of men laughed boisterously. Their laughter shook the walls. The door swung open. Lady Mimiko and the rest of your clan could not possibly be more mistaken, said Ino. Her voice was dripping with unshakable certainty. Her eyes spoke of an unmovable conviction. It was now Hinata's turn to avert her eyes. Were they really mistaken? Hinata honestly believed they were right. She deserved to be called a failure. Lady Mimiko's words had upset her because they were brutal and not because they were false. In essence, she was right. She was a failure. She was useless. It was as simple as that. She would not tell Ino that she agreed with Lady Mimiko. There were some things she could never reveal to anyone. I just wish. Ino started. A long moment passed. It felt as if men could be born, grow old and die in that long moment. I just wish there was a way you could prove to your clan that you're not what they say you are, Ino said with gleaming eyes. Ino was suggesting that she find a way to prove her worth to her clan. To validate her existence to her clan. That had been an obsession that had plagued her for most of her life. It was also an obsession she had outgrown. Proving her worth to herself on the other hand was another story. It was an obsession that still had an iron grip on her. She constantly hungered to prove it to herself that her life was not pointless. Waking up every single morning and feeling as if she was worthless was slowly killing her. It was as if Ino had read her mind. She had to accomplish something meaningful to convince herself that her life was not a mistake. A young dark-haired boy and his mother passed next to their table. The boy was being led by his mother who had her hands secured around his own. His short legs struggled to keep up with the long strides of his mother as they maneuvered their way around the tables. The boy suddenly turned back his head, flashed her a cute smile and waved at her. He giggled excitedly when she waved back at him. Her eyes remained on the dark-haired boy until he faded from sight. The boy's features reminded him of a reclusive dark-haired comrade of hers. He reminded her of Sasuke. The tiniest seed of an idea was planted in her mind. Her heart trembled and butterflies started swirling around her stomach as she contemplated the idea. If she were to succeed in carrying out what she was thinking, surely she would prove to herself that she was useful. It would prove that her existence was not meaningless. She felt her fingers shaking. Her thoughts frightened her. She hid them under the table so that Ino would not notice. She glanced at her friend to see if she had noticed her odd behavior. Ino was lost in her thoughts. Her throat was as dry as paper. Her fingers kept trembling. She felt the urge to move around. She felt the urge to remain seated. She bit her lip. She started tapping her fingers against her thigh. Guess who I saw with Genma the other day, Ino said. She broke away from her thoughts and felt her body calming down. She was grateful for the distraction Ino was providing. Her dangerous thoughts threatened to overwhelm her. What? She said while reaching for her half-finished drink. I said, guess who I saw with Genma the other day, said Ino. Hinata's muscles melted in relaxation as hot water flowed from the showerhead and cascaded down her back. She sighed in contentment. Today had been a mentally and emotionally exhausting day. Her mind was set on going through with the idea she had stumbled across earlier. She knew what she had to accomplish to validate her existence. The successful completion of this task would show that her existence was not as irrelevant as the pebbles on the street. The cycle of self-hatred would surely end. It was a simple and yet complex task. She would pull the last Uchiha out the darkness. She would guide Sasuke Uchiha back into the light. Sasuke was drowning in darkness. He was broken. She did not need the ability of being able to look inside him to know he was broken. He needed someone to fix him. She would be that someone. If she succeeded, then she would stop feeling useless. There would be no more sleepless nights. There would be no more tears. She would be free from the voices that were always whispering in her ear. She toweled her hair as stepped out of the shower. She stood by the mirror and wiped away the steam that was blurring her reflection. The resolve in her eyes gave goosebumps. She felt a thick knot of nervousness in her gut. If she succeeded, her heart started thumping fast in excitement, she would be free. Free like a bird that was released from its cage. Free like a prisoner who was unbound from his heavy shackles. She would be free from the constant self-loathing. She would finally be free from the self-hatred. She was being pounded by a flood of emotions. She was excited, she was hopeful, but most of all she was terrified. She was terrified of venturing into Sasuke Uchiha's world. She had only seen tiny glimpses of his world. She had caught a glimpse of it when he had shockingly opened up to her about his mother. She had witnessed it a few times through his eyes. Sasuke was known for emotionless as a statue. She disagreed with that sentiment. His eyes bared his emotions in all their nakedness. She was familiar with darkness, but the one within Sasuke was a different kind of darkness. It was a much more consuming darkness. She had to be careful that she did not lose herself inside Sasuke's darkness. Who knew if she could ever be the same if she let herself be pulled into it? In the midst of all the confusion, fear and excitement, one thing rang above all. Sasuke was an opportunity to achieve something that would quiet the voices in her head. She was not close to Sasuke, but he talked to her. That was something not many people could boast of. She had to take advantage of the opportunity she was presented with. It was her chance of achieving something important for once in her disappointment-filled life. Her sanity depended on it. Her happiness depended on it. The next morning, chance allowed her to once again cross paths with Sasuke by the old Yoshino tree. He arrived just after she concluded that he was not coming that day and when it was almost time for her to leave for her afternoon shift. He was dressed in a creased gray jacket and dark pants. The sleeve covering his amputated arm was swinging back and forth as he walked. His dark hair was unkempt and was nearly long enough to cover his left eye. His neglected appearance and his slow, aimless walk made him seem like a homeless man. He took a seat beside her and retrieved a book from his inner pocket. If there was one thing that Sasuke Uchiha possessed, it was a powerful presence. His presence filled the air around him and swallowed her whole the way a whale swallowed a tadpole. He sat stock still. He did not acknowledge her, nor did he look at her. She felt the tension in the air rising rapidly. A greeting was on the tip of her lips, but the tension in the air stole her voice. It was probably the repercussion of the shockingly intimate conversation they had shared the last time they had met. She could almost taste the tension in the air. She started sweating under her collar. A bloodshot eye glided over her. She gathered all the courage she possessed and greeted him with a smile. His eye twitched and his lips twisted in annoyance. "Don't fool yourself," Sasuke said in a voice cool, relaxed and detached. "You and I are not going to get matching friendship bracelets and start painting each other's nails just because of what happened the other day." She imagined the two of them relaxing on her bed on a quiet Sunday. She imagined him paging through a magazine while she applied yellow nail polish to his toenails. Despite the seriousness in which Sasuke had spoken and the tension which was strangely dissipating, a smile appeared on her face.